past 8. I would ask members to take their seats. If you recall, this is the last day, folks. I thought we would have Tuesday, but leadership has told me we've got to get this done today. So we're going to move pretty quickly. I will limit folks on certain procedural matters, but I have my direction, and I normally always accomplish it. For that matter, we have already opened up House Bill 2184, and I think Carpenter's 1 was admitted. That's one. Let me. Matt, first, IT, if you'd go through who's on WebEx.
Jordan Mahallahan, Matt Sterling, and Samantha Potter.
Samantha, are you in the building?
I am.
Okay. Are you coming to committee?
Yes, I should be there shortly.
Okay. Just wanted to see if you were in the building. When we open the bill up, Carpenter's 1, as agreed upon, was admitted. Matt, you have that, correct?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. So far, the committee has adopted the Carpenter 1 amendment with several changes.
Yes. Okay. We all understand where we're at. And then I'm going to give other folks an opportunity to offer the amendment. I anticipate closing down debate at 9:15 or a little before if debate is already settled down. But anyways, with that, I'm going to go to Representative Garber.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm not going to take a lot of time explaining this. The committee's had explainer and the amendments in front of them for quite a while, but I am going to make 2 changes to it. One is being handed out. The other one on page 15, page 19, and page 21, where we omitted the preferences for licenses. They will be added back in. If you look on, if you have your explainer with you, it's on the 3rd page, item 4C, where it says omit preferences. Those are being added back in. So they will be in the bill, in the final bill when Matt.
So the set off, the 15% is back in your
Yes.
amendment. Thank you.
That's the
And the other one is authorized.
Second one is on page 3, concerning the Medical Marijuana Regulation Act, and it says on, it's in section 3, line 27, nothing in the Kansas Medical Marijuana Regulation Act shall be construed to, and it's got its things that they can and can't do. We added in on number 6, we're changing number 6 to authorize any limitation on the number of any licenses awarded under this act to otherwise qualified applicants or authorized any state agency through rules and regulations to effectively limit the number of licenses. It's taking away any caps that people might think they can put on.
Thank you. The amendment has been explained. All of you have had those amendments for a number of days. Hopefully you've read over them. I know I did this weekend. Spent a lot of time on a couple of bills that we have. The amendment has been explained. Matt? Matt?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. I couldn't hear you.
So my understanding is the 15% has been struck, and it would be back in this amendment, correct?
Correct. The 2 changes Representative Garber discussed were to unstrike that language for the 15% of set aside of licenses, and then this piece that would prohibit any caps from being put on licenses. So the committee understands this is the policy change. If this was adopted, I would go through and make conforming amendments. There's several places throughout the bill that talk about rules and regulations to determine the number of licenses and the cap, and I would adjust those accordingly to be consistent with this policy decision.
Thank you. The amendment has been presented and explained. Is there a second? Representative Reese has seconded the amendment. Further discussion on the amendment? Yes, Representative Carpenter.
Are we considering the whole Garber Amendment or just this small portion right now?
The entire amendment with those sections that were previously struck back in.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chairman. If I may, I'd like to discuss. Thank you.
Briefly.
Yes, Mr. Chairman. So, committee, if you look on page 3, lines 2 and 3, this amendment is striking the advisory board, and if you go to the section 19, it's also striking the advisory board there and what diseases will be on the list. And on page 3, it's inserting new language that is extremely broad. So basically, if you want recreational light, you'll vote for this amendment because it is making it to where it is so broad that anybody who has a health issue will have the ability to go into a doctor and basically get medical marijuana. So I don't think that that is what my constituents want. I think that they want true medical marijuana according to the list of diseases that we currently have. But if we adopt this amendment, that list of diseases is out the window and it is substituted for extremely broad language. Additionally, I also would like to point out that the licensing, the fee structure is extremely low. I mean, everybody can basically, everybody can do a $5,000 cap. There's no caps on the plants. So, I mean, I guess if we want everybody growing and well on our way to a full recreational marijuana program, this is the amendment for you. However, real quick, Mr. Chairman, the last thing that I do have a problem with is that on page, in here on the amendment, it says that you can, well, I'm not going to be able to find the page right away, but it says that you can build a dispensary or what have you within 1,000 feet of a school, within a church, playground, and I don't think that that is what we necessarily want to do, Mr. Chairman, so I will be opposing this amendment. Thank you.
Thank you. Representative Garber, you have the floor.
Well, on the First Amendment on page 3, I would agree with him, and I think that leaves it entirely up to the attending physician to decide what is best for his patient, depending on the medical condition that the patient has. So that's why we did that. You know, initially we had a whole list of things that possibly could or could not help with the use of medical marijuana, and we expanded the list to basically cover any condition that the doctor deems necessary or that he thinks would help the patient. So that's why we put that amendment in there.
Representative Penn.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. With the amendments, this is all, Representative Garber, the set-asides, if you will, or the reserves, as we discussed. In the amendment that you just posed, that's talking about that portion?
Well, the sections that we're adding back in is the original language.
Okay. And per our conversation in our small group or our subcommittee of sorts, ad hoc, was not the language that you agreed to have the caps on because the caps make the set-asides worthwhile? If you have no caps, then what is 15% of infinity? Exactly.
Well, if we have no caps, that means anybody that applies that's eligible will be able to get the license.
Absolutely, and that goes to...
We could actually have more than 15% of those.
Yes, sir. Thank you for that. I think, Mr. Chairman, that goes to Representative Carpenter's summation of this, the summation that he made, is that this is recreational light. If you have no caps and you have a low fee structure, this is not what our constituents are being sold. They are being sold closely regulated medicinal marijuana, but this is a tee-up for full burn industry. I would not be in support of this amendment. I encourage others not to.
Thank you. Representative Epley.
Well, just that we need to move this along, Mr. Chairman. That's all.
Representative Heiberger, I'm sorry.
Is there a handout for the second part of the Garber Amendment, to the amendment? I've only gotten one sheet.
Okay, the Garber Amendment itself is a large document that was handed out last week.
Got that, but I understand there were two changes.
There was two changes. He amended he added back in the fee structure and the 15% set aside.
Is there a handout?
It's not on that amendment. He just went back to his original amendment, those sections. And Representative, would you give him them sections that you're putting back in?
Yes, I have it right here. Second. On page 15, section 20, we originally, in my amendment, had deleted lines 3 through 10. Says the Secretary shall issue not less than 15% of cultivator and laboratory licenses to entities that are owned and controlled by the United States citizens or residents of this state and are members of one of the following economically disadvantaged groups: blacks or African Americans, American Indians, Hispanics, or Latinos and Asians. If no applications or an insufficient number of applications are submitted by such entities that meet the conditions set forth in this subsection, licenses shall be issued in accordance with sections A and B. That's in that area. The next area deals with another, page 19, section 28, lines 3 through 20, is basically the same language, except it's not for cultivators and laboratories, or processor and distributor licenses on page 19. On page 21, it's basically the same language, except it covers retail dispensary licenses.
So that was in the original bill that I had in the original bill. His amendment initially struck it, but he wants to put it back in now.
Yep.
You're good now? Thank you. Representative Wagner.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just also to reiterate what some of the earlier representatives had talked about with this being marijuana light, this amendment also deletes all caps on THC content, which is something the state of Colorado, from just bitter experience, has learned creates multiple problems with, quote, patients of medical marijuana. THC content caps are reasonable. This eliminates any.
Howe first.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. For the representative, on page 3, are you taking out the word medical in front of marijuana on your revised amendment, or is that still in there?
Excuse me, page 3, which line?
Line 14, because I think on the original amendment I had you inserted medical in front of marijuana.
Say page
it would
3,
still
line
be in
20.
there. It would. He didn't strike that. It's in the amendment.
Okay. Okay.
Okay. Representative Epley.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I was curious from the bringer of the amendment about the fee structure. In your research, I know these fees are lower than those in the original bill. Do you feel that this fee is at a obviously you feel it's at a reasonable place, but I know in many states they have lower fees. Can you compare your fees in this amendment with other fees in other states and how it stacks up?
I can't speak to the other states, and you are correct. Some states have very high fees. Some states are much lower than ours. I believe we struck a balance that says those who are maybe has substantially less income than others would still be able to pursue this. And we must remember, license fees aren't all that's required to start a business. You've got to have your property, you've got to have everything else in place, which can be fairly costly, I believe. So I think the fees that we have right now in the bill, in the amendment, are fair.
Thank you, Representative Garber, and thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. I'd make one comment. If you're going to keep the 15% in, which he does, the disadvantage, the ones of lower economic positions in life would still be able to afford your licensing fee, I would think. So if we do that set aside, cutting the fees would also, in my opinion, help. Arnberger?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have one quick question for the reviser. Matt, I'm looking on page 10, section 14. Oh, sorry, not that one. Sorry, page 11, section 17. Since we passed Carpenter 1 and it talked about that, does that strike everything that we just did in Carpenter 1? Replace it? If this amendment passes?
So, so you're referring to section 16? Is that the reciprocity?
No, it's the physician relationship tenure. Didn't we discuss that in Carpenter 1?
Mr. Chairman, if I may. That was Carpenter 2,
Oh,
which we
Carpenter 2,
we
okay.
never took action on.
Okay, thank you. Committee, I am going to be supporting this amendment. I don't like all of it in its entirety, but we are on a time crunch. And so I just wanted to state that there's some of it I don't like. There is some good portions in here, though, as well.
Thank you. Go ahead. Representative Jacobs?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm not going to support this, and I don't believe we're on an artificial time crunch. We have next year also this is 70-some pages, and this has big ramifications for our state, for our people. I don't believe we should be rushing this. I think we should look through this with a fine-tooth comb. Rushed legislation is legislation that we regret, and I believe we should probably think about revisiting this, looking at this, going through these amendments, and doing this the right way. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, sir. I would advise the representative that this is only the first step. If it goes to the floor of the House, and if it goes, we do not limit time of debate on the House floor. There would be, I would imagine, there will be a number of other amendments, and then if it should pass, it would go to the Senate committee. So this is a long way from the finish line. With that, Representative Garber, you may close on your amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate the debate. In 2018, I believe it was, President Trump signed a Right to Try Act to allow people who are having serious medical problems to try things that were not FDA approved, medications that are man-made, by the way. I believe this should fall under that category, and I've heard all the stories I continue to get emails and phone calls from people who say, give me their story, and I'm convinced that Kansans should have the right to try this form of medication. So with that, Mr. Chairman, I move my amendment.
Thank you. You have heard Representative Garber move his amendment as he indicated to include the 15% and the balloon amendment that was supplied. Knowing all of that, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, no. No. Opinion of the chair, the ayes have it. Division has been called. All in favor, raise their right hand. All opposed. Ten to 12, motion passes. Moving right along to the Eppley Amendments. Representative Eppley, you want to start with your first?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, thank you, and I will move quickly. There are three basic amendments. The first one is the Board of Healing Arts Amendment, and that's a one-pager. It refers to page 11.
I'm going to interrupt you right there. There was a couple of people who want their vote recorded, correct? I'm sorry about that. Representative Howe, Representative Wagner, Representative Heiberger is a yes. Representative Carpenter is a no. Representative Burris is a no. Jacobs is a no. Thank you. Hauser is a yes. That's it. Thank you. You got that, Connie? All right. I apologize for interrupting you.
No, no problem. All right, Mr. Chairman, we have three amendments that I've brought today. The first is the Board of Healing Arts Amendment. That's one pager from page 11. It refers to lines 28 and 29. Basically, it allows the Board of Healing Arts to vet these people to make sure they are these providers / physicians, that they're appropriate for recommending marijuana and that they stay current. And for that, they do want to charge a fee of up to $175. That is my first amendment, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Amendment has been explained. Is there a second? Representative Armberger is a second. Further discussion on the amendment? Representative Howe.
I know we numbered these when we first talked about them. Which number is it again? Epley?
This is number 1.
Epley 1.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. Further discussion? Seeing none, you may move your amendment.
I close.
He closes. You've heard the Epley Amendment 1. He has closed. All in favor say aye. Those opposed, no. Opinion of the chair, the ayes have it. The ayes do have it. The bill has been amended on Epley 1. Representative Epley, you may go to, which one do you go to next?
The second one, Mr. Chairman, is, I call it the medical marijuana employer drug testing policy. It's a 4-pager. It refers to 4 pages. Again, you've had this for several days to read. I think it's pretty non-controversial. This allows for employers to continue drug testing policies. These vary from employer to employer. This provides for this. This allows this to still be codified in law. Several states have this exact same language. 5 other states, including Colorado, Michigan, Montana, Oregon, and Vermont, which protects employers in the event they want to drug test someone, and also it does not let an employee off the hook if they have THC in their system. So that's a 4-pager, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Is there a second? Representative Armberger. Seconds. Further discussion. This is the one I believe that was brought by the chamber. Would that be correct?
That is correct. Their wording. Yes, sir.
Thank you. Yes, Representative Heiberger.
Ask a revisor question?
You may.
Matt, do you know if we have anything comparable in statute anywhere else that would apply to alcohol or any other prescription drug?
If you look through the existing labor statutes that we're amending in this bill, there's certain provisions for taking action against employees for misconduct and gross misconduct, and there is discussion about what constitutes gross misconduct in terms of the use of alcoholic liquor. So it does exist for alcoholic liquor in current labor statutes. And I have it pulled up right now on my screen on page 54 of the bill. If you look in these provisions just below where we're amending the definition of gross misconduct.
Representative, do you have other questions of the revisor after reading it? Okay. Just wanted to make sure I gave you that opportunity. Okay. We have a motion to amend by Epley 2. We have a second. We've had discussion, further discussion. Seeing none. All in favor of Epley 2, say aye. Those opposed, no. Opinion of the chair, the ayes have it. The ayes do have it. Epley's 2 has been attached. Representative Epley.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And again, I'll move quickly. You did get an explainer from me. I'm not as cool as the representative from Sabetha to have a deep explanation, but I did my best on my amendment. It is a 8 pages long and refers to pages of the bill, and I'll reference it in 3 general categories. The first 3 references are in the physician-designee relationship, and those are defined in pages 2, pages 8, pages 11, and 12 as outlined. What I tried to do there was define a traditional physician-patient relationship and make sure that we don't allow people to doctor shop from provider to provider. That's the safeguards in that. Basically, it says if you come to a physician and have a physical exam, review your need for THC, and you review your old records, that on that visit you may get a recommendation for marijuana on that visit, and going forward up to 1 year's time. And then you do have a period of 6 months that you have to stay in that relationship with that physician. You can't change providers. Also on page 8, line 29, I would be sure and clarify for you to look at that. It changes possession totally from 90 days to 30 days. States vary on this. There are a few states that codify this. I did this because of the opioid language that we have that we utilize now as providers. I thought it was good to be consistent with opioids, and that is why I made that change. So that's the first 3 things on my explainer. The next 4 are regarding the laboratory. Again, this is, to some extent, boilerplate from many other states. It's the best of the best. I've received no pushback from anyone on this language. Basically, it codifies quality assurance, decontamination language, lab inspections, compliance, and accreditation as offered through ABC. And I would jump down to page 24, line 28. It does direct the ABC director to have the ability to require sample submission quickly if they desire that from any licensee. And that's the lab section. The last section, 3rd section, is the pharmacy section that I made changes in, and that's pages 22 and 26, and then the attachments. I would mention there's a technical cleanup there, Mr. Chairman. I want to advise you and the committee of this. On the attachment 2B1, on page 1 of the attachment, the number there, it says 2%. It should be 1%, Mr. Chair. And so as I submit this amendment today, we're changing that fee, the ceiling for pharmacists to charge from 2% to 1%. Again, that's on attachment 2B1. And those are the 3 general areas. I view this as quality assurance, so that there is quality assurance for the physician relationship, quality assurance for laboratory testing, and frankly, quality assurance for pharmacy overview. We've thought this out. The pharmacy piece of this involves pharmacists as consultants, but not having to work in dispensaries. They will audit all prescriptions. They will enter K-tracks, as will the physician, as outlined in the amendments that we brought. So this will utilize K-tracks as part of the quality assurance going forward. And I've been assured, and I want you to know I've reached out to the pharmacy board as well as the Pharmacy Association. They're in agreement with this. They have no problem with this. So they're in agreement, and as a physician, I feel qualified to make those changes in the physician relationship. And I've worked with a lot of labs, and I've done a lot of research on the lab language, and I think this is good lab language. So with that, I'll listen for questions.
I have a question for you.
Yes, sir.
Or for Matt, whichever. You have a new section 35 with $5,000 processor license application. Is that similar to what was in Garber's? I'm looking at page 23, but maybe I may have the wrong amendment here. Because I'm looking, mine's very thick, and it may be one of your previous ones. No. I had one of your earlier amendments. Sorry. You've submitted so many revisions.
I'm sorry, Mr. Chair.
So this is the one we're looking at. That's what I thought we were looking at. Okay, this has to do with the labs and the
physician in the pharmacy. And I have not submitted any new updates. That's been my amendments all the way through. The only change I made is going from 2% to 1% in the attachment 2 on about the 5th line of that attachment 2.
Thank you.
And mine is, I think, 8 pages long on the 3rd amendment. Or if you count both sides, probably 15.
Thank you. Is there a second to the Eppley? Representative Reese has seconded the amendment. Discussion and questions of the representative. Representative Penn, I'm sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. For the carrier amendment, just like the previous amendment carrier, thank you for bringing this amendment. I appreciate it. A quick question. In our sidebar discussion that we had downstairs, we discussed the original language said 90-day supply. Yours changes it to a 30-day supply. My amendment that hasn't been introduced yet said that it should be as determined by KDHE. Is that in your 30-day supply as well? Who determines what a 30-day supply of all these various materials actually are?
Again, it's similar to the same relationship with physicians with patients or providers with patients. The physician makes that determination of what a 30-day supply is, and a patient may not call sooner than 30 days for a refill of their opioids. The same would be true in the codification of this, that you couldn't call sooner than 30 days for a refill of your THC.
Okay, but our
And
agreement...
you couldn't be in possession more than 30 days at a time.
Track, and thank you for that, sir. Our agreement that you agreed to is that we would add that language in there. It sounds to me like you're saying that you're going back to your original position of leaving it to the physician. Is that so?
That's my intent at this time. I think you still have a capacity to bring that piece to the table and rectify that and change that.
Would you be willing to bring it to the table and rectify it here now while we're considering this under duress?
Not at this time.
Let me ask you another quick question, sir. If there was a pop-up doctor, an enterprising young doctor, who decided to do this with the top part of your amendment, where you say the ongoing physician-patient relationship, and you, in your experience, lay out exactly what doctors are qualified, what stops someone from being able to go to one of those doctors, having said relationship, and just getting a recommendation, I think you said, not a prescription, so that this proliferates our communities?
Yes, Representative. These are recommendations. Let me clarify that, not prescriptions. That's very important that we make that change, that understanding. As far as your concerns about, quote, pop-up doctors, I will say that because of the language I put in the Board of Healing Arts Amendment, I think that covers that pretty well. These will be vetted. They'll have to be licensed through the Board of Healing Arts, and that's not a low bar. That's a high bar. So I'm not too worried about pop-up dispensaries or pop-up physicians, as you say.
Thank you, sir. I just have umbrage taking your word for it. I've not seen that language that you said that you've added to other manuals. We've not had the chance to see any of this backstory that you lay all of your claims upon.
In the interest of time, I didn't want to go there today, Representative, and I appreciate your concern.
Thank you. Further discussion? Yes, Representative Potter.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I had one question concerning the amendment. For the most part, I am very supportive of it, other than the K-Tracks tracking, because I believe there's other things in place. Would you be willing to take that portion out, and I'd fully support the amendment?
Thank you, Representative. I've thought about this, and I understand the other tracking methods, which include seed to sale. We've discussed that. And this may be a bit duplicative at this time, but I think it's better to overregulate than underregulate in the optics of going forward. And so I chose to leave that language in there for now. I think it can be amended out at some point or taken out at some point through this process of as we make laws. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Chairman, can I add something, please?
Yes, you may.
Just one point of clarification. The now 30-day supply under the Epley Amendment would be set. That's one of the provisions to be set by rules and regs by the Secretary of KDH&E. And then the second thing that I would ask the committee to, this amendment on pages 11 and 12 amends the patient-physician relationship in a manner different than the Garber Amendment. So I would like clarity from the committee, since those provisions will conflict if this is adopted, how the committee would like that to be reflected.
Thank you for bringing that to our attention. I'm going to come back to you for just a second. Representative Garber, there is a conflict between your amendment and the Representative Epley's amendment. Do you wish to go with Representative Epley's amendment, or how would you give me some direction here?
Once again, as all of us here know, long process to get this bill through. Leave it up to...
Yeah, speaking to the mic, I can't hear you.
Sorry. It's a long process that we're going through here. We're at the first stage. I haven't really looked into the conflict. So if Matt, could you explain that a little more?
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So the Garber Amendment, if you see in the patient-physician relationship, struck the 12-month requirement, struck the in-person physical exam of the patient, and replaced it with a physical exam or review of the medical history of the patient. The Epley Amendment requires it also strikes the 12-month relationship, but it requires an ongoing relationship is established by an office visit. It requires that a review of the medical records, in particular related to indication for the THC recommendation, and a physical exam has been performed. So there's additional requirements for that patient-physician relationship in the Epley Amendment.
Thank you, Matt. I prefer my amendment. However, again, I think we probably should look into this a little more, and as it moves through the process, maybe that will be changed. So I will accept Representative Epley's version.
Thank you. So Matt, if the Epley 3 gets on, then that would modify the Garber Amendment.
Yes, understood, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for that clarification.
You're quite welcome. Now, Representative Carpenter.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to point out that, discussing K-Tracks and what have you, dispensaries, we've talked about seed to sale. In the Garber Amendment on page 22, we struck K-Tracks. So at this point, there's really no reporting requirement for seed to sale or any of that kind of stuff. So I just wanted to point that out to the committee. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Representative Miller.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. 2 points of confusion. Did I understand the revisor to clarify the responses that Representative Epley had to Representative Penn?
They were close.
Pardon?
They were close. Epley, I'll let you.
Well, with deference to Representative Penn, and I want to make sure that we do get this clarified, it's important going forward. The revisor did allude to the KDHE language in there, and I would look to Matt to clarify that for probably both of us.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So on page 10, section 14 of the bill, it requires the Secretary of KDHE to adopt a number of rules and regs. One of them is to specify by form and THC content a maximum 90-day supply. Under the Epley Amendment, it would be a 30-day supply, but it would still be specified by rules and regs adopted by KDHE.
And was that not what Representative Penn was asking? Okay. And then as to the K-Tracks issue that Representative Potter raised, could we clarify again what Representative Carpenter just said with regard to that issue? Is it moot because of other amendments?
Directing that to Matt or to Representative?
Anyone that can help me understand.
Representative Epley.
I believe I can help you understand. And I think what Representative Carpenter was trying to point out is there is not a tracking situation in the Garber Amendment, and this at least provides for, if I'm understanding this correctly, and because we utilize K-Tracks, there will be a tracking methodology for all sales, both from the physician through his designee, and then also from the pharmacist.
Thank you. And as I understand Representative Potter's statement, she's comfortable with this amendment but for that section. And could she not ask that that particular section be divided when we vote?
Is she asking for it?
I'm saying, could she do, she said she had a problem with that. That would be a way to resolve her problem on that particular.
Either that, or if the amendment gets on, bring an amendment on the floor of the House to strike it.
Thank you.
Representative Potter.
Mr. Chair, I believe that if we did do division, it'd be a quicker option than bringing it to the floor. If you so allow that, I'd like to see that.
If we get into dividing amendments, I'm going to be dividing amendments all day, so it's going to be an up or down. If it either prevails or it doesn't. But I would, if we would ever get to conference, I would, the conference committee would also, you would be there, you could make that suggestion at that time. if any conflicts that we may have would probably be taken care at conference. If it should
Thank you,
go
Mr.
to
Chair.
conference. Anything else? Then, Representative Epley, you may move Epley 3.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate that. And with that, I will close on Epley 3. Thank you.
Thank you. You have heard the representative offer his amendment. All in favor of the Epley Amendment 3, say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. Opinion of the chair, the ayes have it. The ayes do have it. Going to Representative Hoyt. You had no other, right?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My amendment was one page, probably labeled the Hoy Amendment if you're keeping track of those, and it adds a requirement for child-resistant packaging for the dispensaries to consumers.
Thank you. It's a pretty simple amendment. It's just child-proof caps. Would that be correct?
Yes, or whatever form of packaging.
Thank you. Is there a second? Representative Reese? Thank you. I'm sorry. Representative Miller?
I have one labeled Joella. Would that be the same one?
That would be.
Thank you.
Take a second and review it. You've had it all weekend. This is child-proof caps. Any discussion on this amendment? Seeing, I'm sorry, Representative Garber.
And I'm going to support this, but I appreciate the representative bringing this. However, in Section 29, the caps are required at the processor level also. So this is going to be basically just a check at the end of the system. So appreciate it.
Thank you. Further discussion? All in favor of the Hoyt? I'm sorry, with another question? Yeah, you want to close?
I close.
Thank you. All in favor of the Hoyt Amendment? Those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. Opinion of the chair, the ayes have it. The ayes do have it. It is amended. Representative Smith. I'm going to take up, give me just a second. I'm going through my amendments and I had it here. Smith had a similar amendment on safety, packaging. Got so many amendments. Smith 1. Have that one, Representative?
Well, which one's 1? I didn't mark them 1 and 2.
It's the one
Show
with
me
the
both.
seal.
Okay, yeah, the tamper-proof. Yeah, a tamper-proof seal unique to Kansas, much like a whiskey bottle that you would purchase. That's basically what I'm suggesting. Yep.
Would it be paper? Would it be tape? Or?
Well, if it's tamper-proof, it's likely to be adhesive. And then if it's removed, then it would come apart in pieces. That's generally what happens with the tamper-proof. If the cap is opened, it is clear that the seal has been broken.
Matt, is there any specific thing in statute that says anything about liquor seals or other types of seals and how they are to be affixed and what they are made of?
I don't think I can give a full answer to that quickly. I'll note, at least while I'm talking on the Smith Amendment, in addition to these requirements, that it has a tamper-proof Kansas-specific package. It would require the Secretary of Revenue to establish those packaging requirements, and it would also create a new section that would require the transport of medical marijuana to be in that sealed packaging and located in a vehicle. And that provision is modeled after existing law pertaining to the transportation of alcohol in terms of requiring it to be in the sealed package, having to be inaccessible to the driver.
Thank you. I have Representative Smith offering his Smith amendment. Do I have a second? Second. Representative Epley. Discussion on the Smith amendment? Yes, Representative Heiberger.
I presume this would supersede the amendment that we just passed?
No, Matt, would it conflict with the Hoyt amendment?
I don't believe it would be in conflict. It would just require that the packaging requirements that are established by the Secretary of Revenue would also have to be consistent with the language adopted in the Hoy Amendment.
You would blend the language of the two amendments then?
Yes, this would be an additional requirement.
Okay, thanks.
Is that helpful? Thank you. Clayton. Oh, I'm Representative Clayton.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, Madam Vice Chair. I have a question for the carrier of the amendment. As I'm looking at this, so essentially regarding the transportation, so this is a medicinal cannabis bill. And so with most of our medication, whether it's prescription medication, for instance, if I had prescription medication in my handbag, I could have that in my handbag in my vehicle. But if this amendment were to go on, I would need to, before I, drove somewhere, I would need to put my prescription medicinal cannabis into the trunk of my vehicle. Otherwise, I'd be in violation of the law. Am I correct?
That is correct. And in fact, we tend to look at it as medicine when it's convenient. This is obviously a heavily abused medicine should it become medicine. So this is one of the reasons why we would look at it as keeping it out of the hands of the driver is important.
All right, but I could carry Oxy in my purse, though, right?
Absolutely, you could.
Noted. Thank you.
Further discussion? Yes, Representative Howe.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. While the previous representative made a good point about Oxy, it is not a Schedule I controlled substance. Thank you.
Thank you. Further discussion? Seeing none, Representative, you may close on your amendment.
I close.
Thank you. Representative Smith has offered an amendment. We have had a second. We've had discussion. All in favor of Representative Smith's amendment, say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. Opinion of the chair, the ayes have it. Division has been called for. All in favor of the Smith amendment, raise their right hand. All opposed. 12 to 8. 13 to 8. Thank you. The bill is amended with the Smith amendment. I turn now to Representative Hornberger.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have an amendment that'll be passed out, and I apologize it wasn't passed out earlier. This has been in the making. It's very similar to what you guys saw before when I did the sports betting. It is taking the revenue, some of the sales tax revenues, and we are putting it towards CCBHCs in Section 47 and Section 48. We are putting it in Kansas CASA, and in Section 49, it's going to the IDD population. I've been working with Chairwoman Landwehr on this, and that is where this amendment has come from. If you notice, there is a attachment, and it has to deal with the Kansas statutes. So if you look at the back page on the attachment, it's 25% is going to go to CCBHCs, 25% is going to go to the IDD population, and 5% to Kansas CASA, and that is just based off of the sales tax revenues.
Thank you. Would you mind if I have Matt?
Absolutely.
Matt, would you go through the amendment? This is a new amendment we've not seen before.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, thank you. So as Representative Armberger described, it would insert 3 new sections, sections 47, 48, and 49, which would create 3 new funds. As she said, the first one for CCBHC, the second for CASA, and the third for, it would establish the, for the IDD fund. And The insert is 793620 pertaining to distribution of sales tax revenue. The addition to that statute would require that of the revenue that was collected for sales tax from the sale of medical marijuana, the director would have to certify that amount, and then of that total amount, 25% would go to the CCBHC fund, 25% to the IDD fund, and then 5% to the CASA fund.
Thank you. The amendment has been offered and explained. Is there a second? Representative Penn, thank you. Second, if the committee will recall, when this amendment was offered in the sports bill, I opposed it. They were going to take all the funds from the sports book, and the state will have some expenses there. This is different. Medical marijuana, because of the medical form and the number of people that are suffering from depression and have some mental health problems, I think if there is revenue from this bill, if it should pass and if it's signed by the governor, I think it's appropriate that some of these funds should go and help those that may also be using it for psychological reasons or for mental health reasons. But I'm very supportive of this amendment. I would hope that you would be also. Further discussion on the amendment? Yes. Oh, I'm sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm generally supportive of reinvesting some of this money, but I'm not sure that I'm comfortable doing that with this right now, as I would like to really make sure that if we do reinvest, that it's where those who have been most impacted by the war on drugs, that it's going to benefit those communities.
Representative, you wish to respond to that?
I understand. I chose these three because these are the ones who are going to be more or less just, we added the IDD portion on here because these are going to be the people who, I have a great uncle that my mom is a guardian of in the IDD population, and he's going to be utilizing probably medical marijuana. And so let's help them because the IDD population, their funding is getting cut. Medical marijuana, gosh darn it, the CCB, the mental health folks, their funding is getting cut. So let's help them as much as possible.
Thank you. Further discussion? Representative Hauser.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. 25%, 25%, 5%, that's 55%.
Thank you. Further, Representative Woodard.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Like last time, I'm going to oppose this just because these are, of course, worthy programs, and I thank the carrier of the amendment for bringing it. But I have a lot of respect for our Appropriations Committee, and I think this is a decision best left to them. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Representative Heiberger.
Thank you, and I also appreciate the bringer of the amendment bringing us to our attention, but I think we could support the certified community behavioral health clinics and the community family services by not cutting their budgets.
Thank you. Further discussion? Representative, you may close.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just do want to state that this does go through the appropriations process. It's written in here that it will go through the appropriations process, and this is nothing that unusual. We did this on the lottery vending machines. I close.
You may close. Thank you. The representative closed on her amendment. All in favor of the Arnberger amendment, say aye. Those opposed, no. Opinion of the chair, the ayes have it. Division has been called for. You're counting the vote. Raise your right hand, all the ayes. Six, seven, all opposed? Thank you. The amendment fails. Representative Arnberger.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I called a question.
Not on the amendment. I think you're asking for Should the question now be put?
The question now be put.
What is the question? There's been no motion.
The underlying bill.
Well, someone needs to make that motion before we can call the question on it. That motion has not been made. We've been amending the bill. No motion's been made to approve the amended.
I opened the bill the last time we were here, and we attached one amendment. The bill is still open.
It's been amended.
And the bill has been opened.
I move we recommend this bill favorably as amended. Now there is a question on the table, if it gets a second.
If that will suffice, I will second. Thank you. The question has been called. This will close down debate. The motion that was filed was the motion to call the question. It's a non-debatable motion. Yes, if it's a point of order?
Yes, it is.
Thank you.
The motion should probably be renewed because it was made before the motion, but.
That's true. Redo the motion.
Mr. Chairman.
I've just recognized the representative.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Now can I call to question?
You may.
Mr. Chair.
The question has been called. It is a non-debatable motion. Point of order is always in order, but I was looking at Representative Woodard. He has a second for that. Is that correct? Thank you. Non-debatable motion. Should this motion prevail, we will go directly to voting the bill. All in favor of the. Was there a point of order? No. Okay.
Yes.
Oh, I'm sorry, Representative Jacobs. Point of order only.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I don't know if this question is permissible, but have we heard all of the amendments that were introduced? Are we not able to hear those? Are we not able to debate those?
If this motion prevails, then we will go directly on a vote of the bill.
Okay.
Thank you. As to the motion to call the question, all in favor say aye. Those opposed, no. No. Opinion of the chair, the ayes have it. Division has been called for. All in favor of the motion, raise your right hand. All opposed? Eleven to 11. Chair votes aye. You want your vote recorded? Thank you.
Mr. Chair.
Second. Connie. Representative Howes a no. Representative Jacobs a no. Representative Carpenter is a no. Representative Burris is a no. I've already got you, Representative Heiberger. Representative Wagner is a no. Representative Penn is a no. Thank you.
I have a point of order.
Point of order, yes.
On a call to question, does it not require a 2/3 vote, and therefore that's not a tiebreaker?
It does not require a 2/3 vote.
On a call to question.
Okay. Matt, committee, I will call up Senate Bill 158. As to Senate Bill,
we called the question. We have not voted on the motion.
that is correct. However, I'm going to open up Senate Bill 158. What is the pleasure of the committee as to Senate Bill 158? Representative Arenberg.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move that we pass out Senate Bill 158 favorably for passage.
I have a second from Representative Reese. Discussion. The chair moves to move the contents of House Bill 84 into Senate Bill 158. Making it a substitute, it will be House substitute for Senate Bill 158. I have a second by Representative Miller. Discussion? Yes, Representative Howe.
Mr. Chairman, I'm extremely disappointed in the proceedings today. We came in, finished last week, knowing that we were going to work HB 2184 Monday and Tuesday. I know some things may have changed, but this seems to be like we're bringing the politics of Washington, D.C. to the State House. And I don't think that's, it's just extremely disappointing. I wasn't able to offer my amendment in committee. And I was under the impression, based off of your words, that we would be able to go through our amendments. The reviser could then have time to piece together the bill so we'd actually have time to vote on it before moving forward. So I'm just extremely disappointed. I would urge my colleagues to vote no against this.
Thank you. Further discussion? Representative Penn.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I echo the sentiments of Representative Howe. We were told that we would have until 9:15 this morning. The call to question was done at about 9:02. I did not have an opportunity to offer my amendments as well. I'm dismayed at the lack of integrity that I see in discussions that I've had with my colleagues, as well as the proceedings here. I noticed that I don't have any of my members of my constituency in the room, but if I look into 13 of the cannabis lobbyists here to ramrod through what they want. And I think that this is a rush process. I don't think that this is done in good faith, none of the negotiations. I stand in direct opposition to this particular bill. I think that it's beneath our dignity and integrity. If we're going to push out legislation like this, we should have the opportunity to speak on it, speak freely, do the work of the committee, and not under false time constraints. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir. Representative Clayton.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think I'll just go ahead and point out the extreme irony in the fact that if process is rushed when you like the policy, you sure don't have any objections to it. And I mean that by the subjective view, but if you don't like the underlying policy, then there doesn't seem to be that much of an issue. I think that we will have a lot of time to work this out on the floor. And I do respect all the work that has gone into this, both with people I agree with and people I disagree with. I will be supporting this motion. Thank you.
Thank you. Further discussion on the motion? Representative Carpenter.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to echo some of the sentiments from my colleagues. When we left last week, we were working Carpenter 2. We came back today, and we were no longer working it. And there are some provisions in there, in my opinion, that are non-controversial. I also have, I think, just some other non-controversial amendments. So I hope that debate is lively on the floor, because we had 30 more minutes because we had a 8 to 9:30 committee slot today. And we still had 30 minutes to continue to work other people's amendments and try to make it through the process. So I hope that we do have a lively debate on the floor with this, because it was stifled here in committee today, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you. Further discussion?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I did vote against calling the question. Even though the amendments we still had left, I would probably have opposed. But having been on the short end of those kinds of motions, I support full and free debate. In addition to that, I would say, however, that it is against the rules to question the integrity of any member. Thank you.
It is. We have a number of members that may not like the procedure today, but it is within the rules. It's not the first time it's been done by other committees. We were under the gun, and we did not have 2 days, as I initially was told that we would.
And that's different than questioning someone's intent.
I understand that. After all these years, I've got a pretty thick skin. Yes, Representative Heiberger.
So nothing I say is going to hurt it, I take it. No, I would just echo what the Representative Miller said, and just for the other new members here, I've never been in a committee where the question was called before. So
Thank you. Further discussion? Yes, Representative Howe.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Although I disagree with the procedure today, I'm not questioning anyone's integrity, but I do think it's important to note that we did not hear any testimony during any of our proceedings. We are federal and state affairs, but we have never heard any testimony from any federal agency that is charged with the enforcement of the Controlled Substance Act, the Drug Enforcement Agency. I would like to hear from the U.S. Attorney's Office perhaps as well. There's a lot of talk about decriminalization of marijuana, so I think that needs to be part of the conversation. Perhaps that'll be brought to the floor, but I would have appreciated the opportunity to vet some of those questions out here in committee. Thank you.
Thank you. I would note that in the House we do an hour-and-a-half committee meetings, and we've done several of them for this subject matter, and I always wonder how the Senate does it in 50 minutes. It's yes, Representative Potter.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to state that given the limited time that we have and the broad support of nearly 80% of my constituents for this bill, I do appreciate that we are attempting to get it out of the committee and onto the floor. So thank you, Mr. Chair.
Just remember, folks, that when we get to the floor of the House, this could take hours, and we don't limit debate on the floor. But with that, as long as we're not tedious, and we try not to be. Representative Jacobs.
Mr. Chair, I make a motion to table this bill.
Motion has been made to table Senate Bill 158. I have a second. Yeah, House substitute for Senate Bill 58. 158. Thank you. Undebatable motion. All in favor of tabling House substitute for 158, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, no. Opinion of the chair, the noes have it. Division has been called for. All in favor of tabling House substitute for 158, raise your right hand. None. All opposed to the motion? Thank you. Motion fails. Representative Jacobs wants his vote recorded as a yes. Is that correct?
No, Mr. Chair, I have a comment.
Oh, go ahead.
Thank you, sir. I do appreciate you letting me go through that motion.
Thank you. All right. Chair renews its motion to pass out, put the contents of House Bill 2184 into Senate Bill 158 to make it House substitute for Senate Bill 158. We have had a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. Opinion of the chair, the ayes have it. Division has been called. All in favor of putting the contents of House Bill 2184 into Senate Bill 158, making it House substitute for Senate Bill 158, raise your right hand. All opposed? Eleven to 10. House Bill, it would now be House substitute for Senate Bill 158 has been done. Chair makes another motion to pass out House substitute for Senate Bill 158 with a second from Representative Miller. Further discussion? Seeing none. All in favor say aye. Those opposed, no. Opinion of the chair, the ayes have it. Division has been called for. Those in favor of passing out Senate substitute or House substitute for Senate Bill 158, raise your right hand. Those opposed? The House substitute for Senate Bill 158 has been passed out favorably. Committee, we will probably not meet the remainder of this session. I want to compliment you for your diligence and your good work, your attendance in committees. We will probably not meet during the veto session unless something extraordinary comes around and happens. I hope to see many of you back here next year on federal and state affairs. As we all know, we serve at the pleasure of the Speaker, so I may not be the chairman. I mean, I've been the chairman for the last 6 years, but you never know. You know, I turned 70 here in a few days. I hope I make it for another year. But with that, I want to thank you. I want to thank, yes, Representative.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would like to just compliment the way that the proceedings have happened all session long. Even though we differ on policy a lot of times, we've dealt with each other with respect, integrity, and I think the building of relationships is important as we move legislation on. I do invite, we will be conferencing on several bills, and Mr. Chairman, I think it'd be good for the freshmen to come and attend some of those hearings and observe the way the process is done. And I thank you all, and have a good rest of the session, and we'll see you next year, hopefully. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Madam Vice Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I really enjoyed working with everybody this year, and I enjoyed whenever I would ask you to carry a bill that nobody turned me down. So thank you very much.
Thank you, and we are adjourned.